Hello YouTube. So in this video, I want to go through the Durham report that just came out. And my goal here is to avoid partisanship, hyperbole. I want to give a couple thumbs up or thumbs down to some takes that I've seen by some official sources, but I'm not going to dig in the weeds on Twitter with every nut-picked job just to debunk everything. Just kind of keep it as general and nonpartisan as possible. If you checked out my introduction video, I'm very new to YouTube. This is actually going to be my first official video covering any topic. So keep me to task. If I lean too far in one direction, if I'm not giving you the full story by my selected facts, let me know. Keep me to task. That being said, anyone who's familiar with this is going to be aware that there's a lot of information when it comes to this Trump-Russia investigation, and I'm not going to cover everything in the timeline from start to finish. The only things I'm really going to cover are going to be what's pertinent to the report to provide context to what's being said in the report. For instance, I'm going to not really delve into the text messages between Peter Strzok and Linda, what's-her-face, because she's not even mentioned in the report. And Peter Strzok is mentioned, but nothing pertinent to his text messages. So there's no reason to bring them up. If you want to know the mindset of this person and just how much he despised Trump and what he was saying he was going to do, then you can go look that up. It is covered in the 300 pages of the report, but I'm going to go over just the first 30, which is the introduction, the summary, and the conclusion of what they found. We'll delve a little bit into the details of it, but I really feel like some of the citations I'm going to bring in are a much better way to fill in that context than reading a bunch of this. This text is very boring. I'm going to do my best to make it into the colloquial English that anybody watching this video could understand. So, all right, let's jump into it. So there's 300 pages. I'm going to really cover the first 30 or so because that's a summary of all the information. Durham was placed on this investigation into Crossfire Hurricane after the Mueller report came out and all the assessments were made and whatnot. His investigation eventually turned criminal, and there were 5 criteria that he was looking for. Now, it is discussed, but again, I'm going to try to break it down in a way where you guys can better understand exactly the 5 things that's going on. So the first and foremost, the terminology being used for the Office of Special Counsel or Durham is going to be the OFC or The Office. It's not the TV show The Office, so if you see that in there, you understand why they're saying it that way. It's probably an inside joke for them. I could see how that could be funny. That being said, when General Garland took his seat from the Biden administration, the OFC reported he was very supportive, very helpful. There was no Biden interference in this, and they received everything they needed from Garland. So, right, first and foremost, I do want to say there was no obstruction from the Biden campaign, even though this is kind of damning to his party a bit, generally. More so the Clintons and the DNC, as we'll get into, but generally this is not good for the Democrats. So the OFC was looking into 5 things. First, was this the best way to handle the situation? Was this an FBI norm prior to this election cycle? Did every candidate in this election cycle receive the same level of treatment, or were some treated differently than others, despite how friendly they were with the FBI? And were there bad actors inside the FBI? The 5th question is, was the Pfizer report doctored? So why did Durham release this report? Well, Barr put Durham on this report, and part of that law was he needed to release a report where it was publicly readable. They couldn't redact anything. It could have been discerned by the public, everything in it. Now, Durham actually warns that some sources and methods are revealed in this, and people should consider not releasing it because of that, but by law, he had to release an unredacted report, and here it is. So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I want to start off by what William Barr said in the conclusion of the Mueller report. So this is going to be our first citation here, and let's just go ahead and jump into it. Ignore that. The GOG special counsel says that there's no conflict on Mueller's and Barr's statements about obstruction inquiry. So what William Barr effectively said is the report does not show collusion with Russia or coordination or conspiracy, which collusion would be a colloquial term for. There's no proof of that in the Mueller report. He also concluded, and this is unrelated a little bit, but I just want to cover the headline. He also stated that there was no grounds to go after Trump for obstruction of justice because of obstructive acts he took against this investigation. Now, this was controversial at the time, and Mueller in court actually said some things that sort of undermine this. But where it really matters is the Mueller team came out with the DOJ Barr team and backed Barr's findings and assessment of the report. They said that Barr's findings were in no conflict with the information in the report. So they essentially said he was right with his take, even if they personally didn't like it. So, moving on, Barr wanted to figure out why Crossfire Hurricane started if nothing came from it, and that's where Durham came in. And again, this was not criminal at first, it was just an inquiry that developed into a criminal investigation. So how did Crossfire Hurricane start then? So we get into George Papadopoulos. He was a volunteer for the Trump campaign, pretty low-level official. He really didn't do much with the campaign, but he was saying some things, and I'm going to pull up a second citation here. Again, there's a lot. This is a whole hour topic, but Papadopoulos was convicted on lying to the FBI. So he was in a bar in Australia. A couple Australian nationals overheard him talking about trying to coordinate between Trump campaign and Russia. He tried, as we see here, the operative. Papadopoulos offered to meet on dirt with Hillary Clinton with an off-the-record meeting with leaders of the Trump campaign, meaning he was trying to establish a link to the Trump campaign. I don't know if he ever succeeded, and again, you can dig into this if you want, but it's not that pertinent to the report. If you want to get into it, we can in a different video. But as far as the report goes, this is just an assessment that they never actually had anything on Papadopoulos. They had him for lying, absolutely, but they never heard him in the conversation say he actually spoke with anyone in Russia, had a Russian contact, had a Trump campaign contact. He seemed like a guy that was trying to make some quick money off the election with some dirt that he got in a very similar way to Michael Steele. I'm not giving judgment here. I don't like it personally, but this is what happens in campaigns, and he lied to the FBI at the end of the day, and he was charged for it. That being said, the FBI was also trying to get a FISA warrant on him, as we find out in here, and they failed. And I don't know exactly if they failed because of this and they were discovered, but they were cherry-picking information. They never did proper investigations into the Papadopoulos or the witnesses. They never followed up on any of these things. They never checked databases, and they used cherry-pick information to try to get this FISA warrant on Papadopoulos when they actually knew for a fact that he didn't actually have any contacts with either of these two sources. So he was charged with lying to the FBI, but that being said, that's all they really had on him, and there's a whole thing with Trump pardoning, and I don't want to get into any of that. It's not pertinent to the report. So the next step of the report is going to be Carter Page. They start talking about the reports. The investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, has been established and started because of the Papadopoulos information. Peter Strzok is on the record admitting that the Papadopoulos information is weak at best, which it's a huge norm breaker that he didn't go through the proper channels, do the proper research with databases, and didn't open a low-level investigation. He opened the highest level of investigation possible against the Trump campaign, something that the FBI is very cautious not to do during an election season against almost any other candidate. So that is one of the 5 criteria that Durham was looking for, is unequal treatment of campaigns. We're going to get into it a little bit, but the Hillary Clinton campaign was having foreign nationals donate illegal amounts of money in illegal ways, and she was briefed on it as though she was a good faith actor and didn't know anything about it. Whereas when it was happening with Trump, they didn't inform him and investigated him. So, again, we're going to dive into some of that a little bit later, but just to provide the context here. So now, again, Carter Page. So there's 2 things that they went after Carter Page for in order to get a FISA warrant. And I'm going to finish up with them cherry picking and lying about Carter Page with a citation here about an aide or an attorney for the FBI altering an email from the CIA. Now, Carter Page was an informant, a cooperative, helpful informant about Russian information with the CIA. The CIA informed the FBI of that. An FBI lawyer took that information, altered the email illegally, and used that doctored email as one of the multiple pieces of information to attain this FISA warrant against Carter Page. He was charged with it. He admitted to it, and he was charged with it. This is Durham's first arrest in the investigation, and I think his only successful conviction as well. Some people say he bit off more than he could chew. Others say that these are experts that know the laws and know where they can dance the line and not go to jail for it. So that's why most of their actions were not actually illegal, with what we'll get into about Crossfire Hurricane. So Strzok opens his full investigation, goes after Carter Page using this doctored email as one of his two sources of information. The other source of information is what the FBI is apologizing for, and that would be how they assess the Steele report. Which we're going to get into Michael Steele with the conduct of the DNC. He was hired by somebody that was hired by somebody that was hired by somebody that was paid by the DNC, and we'll get into all that. Now, Carter Page, the FISA warrant actually worked. And they had access to Carter Page's phone calls and whatnot the way that our intelligence apparatus does. And there's a 2-hop rule, meaning when Carter Page was inside of the White House, Trump's claims that his Trump Tower campaign was being wiretapped did have a little bit of credibility behind them. Now, that doesn't discredit everything against Donald Trump, and that doesn't say everything he said is true, but this one thing that was covered as a lie was actually true. Now, I'm trying not to get into personal feelings until my script is done and have assessed this report, but if you do want to stick around after, I am going to just ad-lib about some personal thoughts on this and maybe my political opinion as well. So now that we've talked about the doctored email and them cherry-picking information, we are going to talk about the Steele report a bit. I don't want to dive too much into it, but the FBI in this FISA warrant had already known at the time that none of the information in the Steele report was corroborated, and they knew that a lot of it didn't match up with who they knew to be the source of 80% of the information and what he was saying. Michael Steele ended up getting a lot of his information from a man named Donchenko, and Donchenko's telling of that information was a bit less hyperbolic than what Steele put in the report. Danchenko also wasn't in Russia, but again, we'll get to all that. So Michael Steele was hired by a firm called Perkins Coie. This is why, okay, you see narratives right now. Hillary Clinton is incriminated by this report. Hillary Clinton's at fault. Hillary Clinton tried to get Trump convicted of treason. There is no proof of that. Hillary Clinton's hands are clean here, and this is going to kind of get into why. Hillary Clinton is the candidate. She hires experts to do this stuff for her. Some of it's shady. Most of it, she maybe knows something about it enough to know it's happening, but not enough to incriminate her. She is busy campaigning, making phone calls, raising money. She doesn't have time to get in the nitty-gritty and do the things that her employees were doing, as we'll see here. So she is not implicated in this in any way besides turning a blind eye to it. It looks bad on her, but from a legal perspective, nothing is going to happen to Hillary Clinton from this unless new evidence comes up, because what's in the Durham report does not implicate Miss Clinton at all. And there's no proof she was trying to get Trump for treason. The proof, actually, that the FBI knew seems to be she was making this up specifically to get the attention off of her emails, because there were allegations of Russia hacking the DNC servers. If she could somehow tie that to Trump, she could show nefarious action with Trump and Russia. It was their plan to falsely make a correlation between Trump and Russia, and they were doing it intentionally. And that's proven in the report. So, okay, Michael Steele was hired. The Clinton campaign hired a firm called Perkins Coie. They were the ones that hired the opera research firm Fusion GPS, which we're going to get to one more time. And again, there's a bunch of information about them that we're not going to delve into because it's not pertinent. We're only going to get to them one more time in this video. But they were the ones that hired Steele. Steele was working for Orbis at the time, and he and Orbis worked together to do what they said was go to Russia and get a lot of this information directly from Russia. We found out that wasn't true. We found out the primary source was Igor Donchenko, and he lived in the United States at the time. And these are all rumors and speculation. He said some of them, one of them he got over the phone from an anonymous caller speaking with a Russian accent. Another one he got from some woman that lived in Russia, maybe, but didn't at the time. And others he just heard in passing, but he never said anything besides rumors and speculation, not to be reported factually. And this was the primary source for the Steele dossier. So it was also found out that he was employed by the Democrats and he has a really sketchy history. Now, this isn't 100% pertinent to... I don't want you to take away, I'm trying to trash Igor Danchenko here. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because the FBI looked past it but knew it existed. Danchenko was caught in an investigation where it was pretty sure it was proven, it was at least alleged, I'm pretty sure it was proven that he was trying to use Russian money to buy state secrets for the Russian government. And the FBI was aware of this, and they just ignored it and used him as a primary source. Even though he was saying that everything in the dossier was just rumors and speculation. So the FBI, and maybe some honest actors in it, I'm not sure, but somebody in the FBI even offered 7 figures to Michael Steele to bring some proof of these allegations, and none of them were met. There was a chance to become a millionaire here if somebody could actually just prove any of these things. And none of it was done. So why was this dossier used as the centerpiece for the wiretap against Carter Page and the FISA warrant? If none of it was proven, all of it was rumors, opera research, and it was funded by the DNC. Why was the FBI uncritically accepting DNC opera research without even bringing up the fact that the DNC had a huge stake in this to have this research looked into and out there? Just the fact that an FBI investigation into Trump was happening, even if it was nothing, would counter the fact that there was an FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton over her emails. And they knew that. It's proven, it's said in the report. And this was their actual intent. Now, Danchenko did nothing criminal. And he, based on his wording, it's clear that he knew he didn't want to get charged with lying to the FBI. He completely threw the Steele report under the bus and said none of it was true. He also made some other claims. Again, he claimed some council person in New York was nefariously tied to Trump in Russia, and that was the claim he got over the phone from an anonymous source speaking in a Russian accent. So, like everything from a legal perspective was covered for him because he used the right words, allegedly, or this is rumor and speculation. Now, so we're moving into a think tank analyst citation here. This is the Igor Donchenko story. So this is the case against Igor Danchenko, and you can dive into it a bit if you want. This is him basically discrediting the Steele dossier that he was the primary source for. He admitted he was the primary source. I'm pretty sure they go over it in this. This is the citation I got that from. Yeah, let's do a fine for 80. Yep. Danchenko, by his own admission, was responsible for 80% of the raw intelligence in the dossier. So he was the primary source, and he was a United States citizen living in the U.S., so there were lies that the FBI was using when they were talking about the Steele report. This is the gentleman, Sergei Milian. This is who he smeared because of an anonymous phone call. So, um, the one of the questions from the OSC was the treatment of the Trump campaign versus the Clinton campaign. I can't really figure out where this fits in the timeline. I just kind of feel like since we just covered Paige Papadopoulos and the FBI, kind of go here. These accusations against the low-level staffers were kept secret from Trump. Again, Clinton's campaign was treated very fairly by the FBI. Some things that were maybe lies were overlooked, whereas Trump's team, we'll get into Michael Flynn a little bit later, but it seems as though the FBI was purposely trying to set them up. So there was a pretty clear double standard in the FBI's actions when it came to each campaign. And again, if you look into some of the text messages and whatnot, you'll see that the people doing these double standards really did not like Donald Trump. Trump's first instance of hearing about any of these low-level staffers was when Comey told him, and Comey testified about that. Not going to go into it. Comey's not even mentioned in this report. Again, just providing context. You can look that one up if you're more interested. So there's no proof tying Trump to these low-level staffers. I don't think there's even any proof that he even spoke with them. If he did, it was brief. Same thing with his higher-ups. I don't think there's anything that ties Papadopoulos to Jared Kushner or Don Trump Jr. Now, I don't think you can say Trump was innocent because his staff did do some things that weren't good. There was the Trump Tower meeting, which I'll get into because of Fusion GPS, but they did, on their end, reach out to some of these people. Even if it was a setup from Fusion GPS, it still shows the Trump team's efforts to reach out to these entities for help. So it does show intent a little bit on their end, but they never really got any responses. So essentially, everyone kind of just needs to take a step back and see that this wasn't as damning as it looks. So this is good news for the right wing, but they just need to reel back on the hyperbole a little bit in terms of who's going to jail and treason and such. Where are we at? Okay, so also, there was a claim that Russia hacked the DNC, and if you remember that time, Seth Rich, not going to get into any of that, there's no proof that Russia actually hacked the DNC, and a guy named Aaron Mate, big socialist left-wing reporter, actually is the one that uncovered this, and he's the one that keeps getting the DNC, CrowdStrike, and these people to actually admit that they don't have proof that Russia hacked the DNC. It's still speculation. It was in the Mueller report that it appears that they did. So if you want to take a look into this little rabbit hole, you can as well, but it appears that the DNC not letting the FBI into the DNC servers to investigate who hacked them was intentional so that they could push this story about Russia doing it and about Trump backing it because he publicly called for it. And again, there's still to this day no proof that any of that's true. It seems as though it was a narrative to try to tie Trump to them. So going back to the Donald Trump, Jared Kushner timeline thing, again, they did reach out to these people. They did lie. Donald Trump Jr. lied about that Trump Tower meeting 2 different times. Once about what was talked about and once about who was there. He did get caught lying. He did try to meet with Russian nationals to discuss things about politics. It was played up, and leading to my next citation, who did he meet with? Well, he met with somebody that was briefed by Fusion GPS. It was kind of a setup, and nothing ever came of it, which is kind of why no one ever got in trouble for this, but it seems as though Fusion GPS was trying to orchestrate this to just point at it and say it happened. It looks kind of shady. It is mentioned in the report a little bit, but I wanted to dive deeper into it just because we were talking about Fusion GPS and provide the context as to some of the other things that they were up to. So now going into a gentleman named Mr. Dolan that's covered in the report as well. He's not really covered that much, and realistically, it just shows some underhanded tactics here. Mr. Dolan he worked for the DNC for a long time, and he, at the time, was running a firm that worked in coordination with the DNC. And none of it's related to any of this. I just want to give you some background on him. And he was actually the one that flew to Russia to look into the pee tape allegations that Trump had Russian hookers pee on a bed that Obama had slept on or something like that. He had actually done it. Whatever, but the reason it's fishy is Danchenko tried to take credit for it. I think he actually even told the FBI that he did it. And then it was uncovered in later interviews that he didn't. He admitted he didn't. And that it was this gentleman named Mr. Dolan. But the FBI never investigated Mr. Dolan, never even talked to him, never followed up on any of this, that a DNC official and a member of the Democratic Party was actively working on this investigation when they were just supposed to be concerned citizens trying to help keep the election integrity preserved. Why were members of the DNC putting their time, effort, and money into investigating the Steele dossier if it wasn't a partisan document? And then why didn't the FBI follow up on any of this when they documented all of it was true? They never even talked to Mr. Dolan. They just let him off scot-free. Going into the Sergey Millian stuff, it was admitted that a lot of that wasn't true, and he heard it over a phone call. So I can quickly cover Alpha Bank and Suspen. Suspen was, I think, the final arrest by Durham, and he ended up not getting charged with lying to the FBI. But he was very linked to the FBI. He and them shared an office. You can look into that. It's kind of unrelated, but just telling you how close he was to these people. He shared an office. I think he had an office in the FBI, or the FBI had an office in the Clinton campaign where they were very coordinated. He was very he's very connected in the FBI. And he used those connections, as said in the report, he used those connections in order to push Alpha Bank theories that weren't true. Now, here we go. This is Michael Suspen making false statements to the FBI about Alpha Bank that he knew were false. Now, another thing covered, Suspen, actually I should say, Suspen was found not guilty. He didn't do anything criminal. He used the right words. It was shady, but he didn't do anything criminal. I just want to make sure I get that out there. But there was also another programmer that was working on cybersecurity, and he was told, what was his name? Got it somewhere here in the notes. This gentleman was told that he had a job waiting for him in a high-level cybersecurity. He was the one doing the data mining that helped. I hear Joffe, Joffe. He was the one doing the data mining into the Trump administration to give them information that looked like a factual timeline about Alpha Bank, and it was found in his emails that the Democrats were offering him a high-powered position if they won in cybersecurity. So basically saying, hey, if you do this kind of shady thing for us, we got a revolving door job waiting for you on the inside if we win. Yeah, Alpha Bank was much bigger than that, but I'm just covering what they talk about in the report. Nothing ever really happened from it. So now I want to jump into Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn. So Paul Manafort, the majority of his crimes, nothing really was related to Trump Russia. The majority of his crimes were, as you see here, a 12-year-old tax case is what Trump's saying. Trump's hyperbole, not the best thing in the world. It's a little bit more complicated than Trump. Trump's not lying. He's always just down the street around the corner from a good point. When he makes he does lie a bit, but a lot of his other points, he just makes the argument poorly, but he actually is onto something, and this is kind of one of them. They did actually put more charges into Manafort, but it seems as though the Obama administration did actually warn the Trump team about Manafort, and I don't know, maybe he was the only person willing to work for the campaign. He did do some good for the Trump campaign, helped Trump get elected in 2016, so it's not like it was all for nothing. But yeah, he was kind of a dirty guy, and most of the things that I think everything that he got charged for was not related at all to Trump Russia, but more what he did as a unregistered foreign national. And I think at the time, this is completely unrelated, he worked for John Podesta's lobbying firm or whatever. So, and then Podesta was given immunity to testify against him, I think. It's not pertinent to any of this. It's another rabbit. Again, like, there's a ton of information about all of this. I could go down 100 rabbit holes and make this video 20 hours and still not get to everything. Now, Michael Flynn. Now, Commentary Magazine they're pretty neocon. I'm a huge fan because they seem to have a lot of integrity. Eli Lake is not a Trump fan. He's not a Flynn fan. He does not like these people. But he is about I can't do his article justice. I really highly recommend, if there's any citation you check out in here, you go read this one. This guy does this situation justice. The summary of it is the FBI didn't act in good faith and almost did actually entrap Michael Flynn. He made his actions after the Trump team had already won the election and they were the incumbent team. There were some sanctions placed on Russia by the Obama administration. He called up somebody inside on the Russian side and said, hey, the sanctions aren't going to be there forever. When we come in, we'll get rid of them and we can get back to the negotiating table. So please don't take any hasty long-term action as a result of those sanctions. And for some reason, he lied about that. He seems to be a bit of a crazy person now, and maybe that's why. I don't think he did anything wrong, and he could have just told the truth. But I also don't think that he was in the best place to give a recap of this. And I think the FBI intentionally knew that and knew the answers and were trying to get him. I want to say one of the biggest things they told him he doesn't need a lawyer, meaning they weren't doing any criminal investigating into him. I highly recommend you read this article. Eli Lake's great. It just shows a little bit of the railroading of him as well. So the conclusion is the FBI actors in this investigation, if they had done the research, if they had looked into the database, if they had been honest, if they had not cherry-picked the narrative, if they had actually followed up as they were supposed to, if they had followed FBI procedure, especially in election times with campaigns, this investigation wouldn't have started. The special counsel wouldn't have happened. Trump would have never fired Comey, which some people could argue that's probably the good thing that came out of this, especially people that blame him for Trump winning. The basis behind the first impeachment, even hypothetically, was Trump is friendly with Russia, and that's why he's acting in this particular way to Ukraine. That narrative wouldn't have been established if none of this had happened prior. We wouldn't have that Trump-Russia narrative because the Trump-Russia coordination was never proven. It just came as a result of the investigation. It was, this is going to be an unpopular take, but it was the Democrats' version of smearing Hillary Clinton with Benghazi. Now, I'm not saying that there are some fair claims about Benghazi. They could have acted faster, etc. That being said, it's the amount of smear done to the Clinton campaign and the Clinton attempt of administration with Benghazi. It was clear that they were doing it to hurt her polling numbers. I want to say a Republican even came out and said that it was an attempt to hurt her poll numbers. It was a witch hunt to a degree, and so was this. And it seems as though this was the Democrats going after Trump in the same way the Republicans went after Hillary Clinton over Benghazi. It seems that way. That's my guess. But I'm just trying to keep it fair. That's kind of seems like this was revenge in a way, and they knew better the whole time. Maybe not some people. Maybe some people in the Democrats actually believed it. I don't think Adam Schiff did. I think Adam Schiff was lying the whole time about the things when he said he had proof. I think that guy is a calculated political actor and smarter than he's given credit for. So Durham's recommendations were that the FBI as a whole is needed. They're good. We don't need to take any drastic changes. We don't need to defund them. But we do need to change some internal processes on hiring, on making sure people follow the proper steps, and et cetera, proper channels, everything needed. And that was actually done in one of my citations that was showing the FBI were taking those steps already. Okay, so if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, staying, listening. I hope I did a good job. Hold me to task if I didn't. I'll read as many of the comments as I can if I even get any. This is my first video. If it doesn't pick up, I'm not going to lose steam. I have a goal with this channel, and I really want to do it. But if you're just here for the breakdown, I hope I did a good enough job and brought in enough outside context to explain why these things were a big deal and covered 2 hours worth, 3 hours worth of reading pretty quickly for you. For anyone that wants to dip now, just leave a sub, a like if you could. If not, whatever. I got a real job as well as this. This is more of a hobby to hopefully meet people that are as passionate about politics as I am, so I can form a group of friends to throw my ideas at that are equally or if not more intelligent than I am to rip them apart. That all being said, now for my personal take on this. Trump is pretty vindicated by this. This was a witch hunt, which again I think Benghazi to a degree was as well. I think most people in the Democrats knew better the whole time, and there's a lot of anecdotal little grains of sand that like Van Jones at CNN said there was really nothing there in 2016, 2017, but they kept going with it. And even he turned around and made actions that contradicted his off-the-record statements. I think that this really does justify a lot of the attempt to be viewed as victims that you see on the right. This proves that in some way they are correct, that the institutions that are supposed to be fair, balanced, and for the people are being used in nefarious ways. There's anecdotal little tidbits of this, like IRS under Obama going after right-wing groups, now the FBI, and parents being called terrorists under Merrick Garland and such. Another thing that I really think this reveals is I see a back and forth online between two people I follow, Destiny and Actual Justice Warrior, where they were talking about how, I want to say it was over the Trump-Russia or the Hunter Biden laptop, how there was a gentleman that testified that he wasn't aware of certain things that the FBI had been aware about for a year. Well, what we learned from this report is that the FBI has a database where they keep all that information. So if somebody in the FBI, especially a higher up, isn't properly briefed about some information the FBI's had for over a year, that's their fault. That's not the FBI's fault. They have processes in place where you're supposed to be briefed on information about the subject you're investigating. And if somebody doesn't know something, we find out from this report the FBI should have that covered. So, point for Actual Justice Warrior, I guess, against Destiny there. But, yeah, I guess, I don't know. I would say that, all in all, nothing's really going to happen from this. The arrests have been made. One person got caught altering CIA emails illegally. Everyone else kind of got off for their actions, which shows shadiness. It shows dishonesty, but realistically, it's not anything criminal. So I get why people are angry, upset, and I get why other people are kind of saying it's not as big of a deal as people say. Why? Because it's kind of politics as usual. There's a lot of shady things that go on in politics. Again, I really feel like this was just the Democrats' revenge for Benghazi at the end of the day. So I hope I didn't piss anyone off too much by this. And like, comment, subscribe. Even if you disagree, hey, if you want to come on, sit in Discord with me and tell me why I'm wrong, and I'll turn it into a video. You don't need to have a YouTube channel. I'm not doing this for fame. I want people to hold me to task and make me a better delineator of politics in real life situations. Help me refine my process to take something new and run it through my mill in my head and come out with the best way to respond to that. So, this is all a quest for me. You're not going to try to keep it civil. You're not going to offend me by telling me I'm wrong, but try to insult anybody, each other, me, other creators. Just be nice. That's all. Just be nice. Be good faith. Take it easy. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching. And, yeah, stay up.